Hello everybody, good morning, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news. As a legend of the club slams the signing of Benjamin Sesko, we'll talk about that. Also, who is Manchester United's worst Premier League signing? Some discussion this morning from Carragher and co that it's Jadon Sancho. I disagree, but we've got a live poll going for you there. Also, we're going to be starting off with Amorim's big transfer warning. You may well see Ahmad and Bruno on the thumbnail and panic. Don't panic, they're not up for sale, but the warning is there from Amorim that they might be, like any other player, because things are changing at Manchester United. Right, before we get into it, don't forget to get your comments in whether you're watching live or not. Some big topics to discuss this morning and a few other bits as well. Welcome to the United Stand, the biggest and best Manchester United football. In fact, I think we're probably the biggest football community, actually, aren't we? Let's be honest. There isn't anybody bigger, not just Man United. It's the one area as Man United fans we can say we win when it comes to fan community. Well done, everyone. But let's start off with our manager, Ruben Amorim. I did see something. I don't really want to talk about this, but I did see something this morning about how Amorim was central to the exit of Onana. I just didn't bother researching it because, as you know, on the March international break, not the September international break, the March international break, we led with a story from our source, from Manchester United, that Onana wasn't wanted by Amorim and Wilcox. So hearing in September that Amorim was central to the exit of Onana, well, sort of knew it back in March. Of course he bloody was. You know, he's had enough of him. But what this summer shows us is that Ruben Amorim has been able to remove players that he wanted to remove. And obviously a lot of those players fit in with what we want to remove as well. I wanted Onana gone. I wanted Sancho gone. I wanted Anthony gone. I wanted Rashford gone. Definitely wanted Garnacho gone after the Villa shirt thing. So yes, I've been, fortunate, like many of you, that players I wanted to go have been removed, but ultimately that comes down to the manager. The warning is it doesn't stop here. The warning is that now that we've removed the bomb squad or the low-hanging fruit, everybody that we get rid of now has value. And what I mean by that is, if, for example, Bruno leaves next summer, there's a big fee coming in. If, for example, Ahmad doesn't turn out to be the right wing-back that Amorim wants and there's no place for him in his number 10, he can sell him and make money. And this is the next stage at Manchester United. And I use Bruno and Ahmad purposely because they're two players I really like. I certainly don't want to see Ahmad going anywhere, and I'd only let Bruno go if he wants to go and he wants to play in the midfield. But this is the next step that I think people aren't realising with Amorim, is that he was relentlessly ruthless at Sporting and he's been relentlessly ruthless at Manchester United. Now, you might be new, you might be old to this community, but two things I've always said, we've always said for years, where Man United fail in recruitment is the lack of aggression to go and get what they need and ruthlessness to remove what they need. So aggression would be, we need Baleba, we get Baleba. Ruthlessness would be, we don't want Onana, get rid of Onana. So we're on the path. We're not quite there. There are still ruthlessness that needs to be happening around exits, and there's definitely still aggression that's needed to bring better players in. But we are starting to move in the right direction. And I don't think any of this reflects badly on the manager. So when we're talking about what's next, nobody's really safe. I think that's the message under Ruben Amorim. I think some people will be very interested by this and haven't figured it out and don't know. Jose Mourinho, when he was in charge, was not close to the players. He had maybe 3 or 4 players that he had good relationships with, but he wasn't close to the players. Ten Hag, similarly, was not close to the players. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was very close to the players, got on with them like a father figure. Ruben Amorim is not close to the players. He isn't. There is not that relationship where it's arm around them, everything like that. That's why he stands distant at Carrington. He likes a separation. He does get involved. He does have a laugh. He does get on with them. But there is a very clear line between I am the boss and you are the players. And he'll fight for his players, but he's the boss. The positive of that is that you look at what Ollie did. He didn't ultimately got stabbed in the back, despite being everybody's friend. Ultimately, Mourinho got stabbed in the back by being a little bit different. But the club has changed. Mourinho got stabbed in the back by his CEO and his owners and his director of football, whoever was doing it at that role, and the players. Amorim creates an environment where nobody's undroppable. Bruno was dropped for the Grimsby game. Despite my belief that Bruno should not be a midfielder, he was dropped for the Grimsby game so that Man Utd could play and Agate could play. That's not usual. Bruno would have played that game, especially this early in the season. Under Ten Hag, under Ollie, Bruno would have played that game. It's only the third game of the season. Bruno would have started. So Amorim will be ruthless. Nobody is safe. And the next phase for Amorim is looking at that squad. Do you think that we don't need to sell anybody else? Well, who do we sell? Who's going next then? Because you can't answer that question and not answer the question. Do you think we need to sell more players? Yes. How many? 5? Who? Exactly. Exactly. And this is where it's going to get really interesting because those players are not safe. It's easy to say Casemiro's out of contract, Maguire's out of contract, but I don't count Eriksen and Lindelof. I don't count Eriksen and Lindelof as players that left Man United this summer because end of contract, whatever. I think we still need to remove players. And I think people are going to be maybe pleasantly surprised about who could be going next because I don't think anybody is safe. And the only reason that we've got Ahmad and like my editor was like, are you sure you want to put Ahmad and Bruno on there? And I'm like, I do want to put Ahmad and Bruno on there because it says not safe. That's the whole point. Nobody's safe. And that's how it should be. I don't want Ahmad to go anywhere. But I'm happy to be on the thumbnail because it represents what we're talking about in stage 2 of the ruthlessness. We've just got rid of the easy stuff. You know, you've walked into, you know, when you clear your room up, you know, I remember when I used to have to, well, I still have to do it now. You know, when you get told to clear your room up and you go in and straight away you just go for the easy stuff, you know, crisp packet on the floor, whatever. I've done it. You put it in the bin, easy, right? Then you've got the clothes, you know. Some of them just need ironing. Can you wear them again, like a jumper? You know, then the Hoover. This is what Amorim's at now. So, look, in the case of Ahmad, there is no rumour of Ahmad going. He's happy at the club. Amorim really likes him. But let's just say, across the course of the season, he doesn't do well at right wing back. And then there's not a place for him at number 10. And at the end of the season, there's a conversation where Ahmad says, I want to play first team football. I'm not in the team. And Amorim says, I haven't got a place for you in the team. Man United take 40 million. Could happen. Dalot. A lot of people mentioning Dalot. Dalot's not in the team. Always on the bench. Fan base have sort of, you know, he's a bench player. Knocks on the door. I want to play first team football. You're not a first team player. 30 million. Bruno, as we know, Saudi could happen. There could be other players heading down that route. But, you know, there might be a centre-back that ends up in that position. It could be Mazraoui. You just don't know. I think that this is the next step, and I'm very, very excited about it because it's exactly what needs to happen. I always look at the Europa League final and I go, Garnacho, Sancho, Rashford, Anthony, Malacia. They didn't start that final. And yet, they're the bomb squad to get rid of this summer. There are players in that team, Luke Shaw, maybe Mason Mount, maybe Xerxes. You know, I think there's a lot of players that could end up being, you know, on the next list next summer. We talk about recruitment. I just think it's really important to realise that there will be other players leaving this club and they're not so obvious. And it excites me because the real work starts now. The real work starts now. I'm excited about what's to come. If you've watched the channel, if you've been part of this community, there is a consistency. Maybe there's a consistency in the moaning and the concerns, but there's also a consistency when the door's shut, let's go. I love siege mentality at this football club. I love let's, you know, roll our sleeves up and go. Obviously, the players don't always respond like that, but I think as a fan base, we're ready. We didn't get the midfielder. We've got an inexperienced goalkeeper. We've got an inexperienced striker. We'll talk about that at the moment. But we've got enough to go, right, there's nothing else we can do. We've been a bit ruthless. We've been a bit aggressive. There's an opportunity in front of us. It's time to go. And on the course of this season, there will be setbacks. There will be disappointments. And I think they will be gone in the summer. And I don't think some people have quite figured out that this is not over. The removal of players, the ruthlessness is not over. And the message throughout the club is it's not over. People are going to lose their jobs. Ineos, Glinios are still going to sack people. Man United are going to remove people from that dressing room. It's going to keep happening because they know they're not where they want to be. And Amorim knows he's not where he wants to be. And he is not the type of manager that goes, you lads are my lads, I'll stick with you against the bad fans and the bad press. He knows where he needs to be. And he knows already that there are certain players in that dressing room that are under scrutiny. And by next summer, I think you'll be surprised at 2 or 3 players that leave Man United, because it won't just be Casemiro and Maguire. There'll be players in that first team squad who are moved on. They're hitting 2 years. Agate. I'm not saying they... Look, for me, if you want me to give you names of 3 or 4 players that could go next summer, Delo, Shaw, Mount, Agate, Xerxes, Bruno, on top of Casemiro and Maguire. Now, they won't all go, but I would hazard a guess that 3 or 4 of them are gone next summer on underperformance, not getting game time. And the great thing is, there'll be value in every one of those players. It won't be the same as, Sancho and Anthony. Do you think United are transitioning into becoming what Everton have been the past decade or two, says Shotgun Justice? What? Transitioning into Everton? What? What is Everton? What is Everton? Angie's apparently going to Forest. Well, I'm on with Terry at 11. Hot take, so I'm sure we'll talk about it there. How can we become Everton? Come on. Ferguson's management worked because he wasn't a friend or a ruler. He was a parental figure, caring yet strict, protective yet demanding. Exactly. That's the sort of coach you want, Slazy, yeah. Do you agree that McFred would thrive under this system, says Simply Red? No, because I've got a brain and I don't look back on the past with red-tinted glasses. McFred was a name invented by Beth as an offensive thing. It was a banter thing. They were shit. I don't know why people think McFred were good. I don't know why people look back on McFred and pretend they were decent. They were an absolute shithouse pair. They were rubbish. We had some good results with them, but they were bloody horrible to watch. I hated it. Honestly, Rasmus should also be an option, says Class of 99. Oh, in relation to the worst ever signing. Well, yeah, you've just brought that in. Fair play. Why do Argentina players leave badly? Garnacho, Di Maria and Tevez, says Pranab. Passionate people, I suppose. Amorim's bookies' favourite says next manager to be sacked, says Robert McCormack. And Shoab says, Mark, had an exam yesterday. Once my exam was done, I put my hand up and told the infiliator I was Andre Onana. He knew I was finished. Okay, I'll give you that one. Right, I've just got to check this from Robert before we talk about what Nicky Butt has said. Next manager to be sacked. Well, we've got the first manager. It's Nuno, isn't it? I don't think they've updated it there. I can't find anywhere. I haven't seen it updated, mate. Mine's still got Nuno. There. So, I don't know. I'd say Potter, surely is. Potter. I've been watching Harry Potter recently with Seb. Potter is surely next. Not Amorim. I am going to talk about our worst ever signing, but I really did think this was a brilliant bit of observation to bring into the show. So Nicky Butt, legend of Manchester United, class of 92 member. Only real ones know how good Nicky Butt was. I mean, he was brilliant in that World Cup for England in 2002. We actually played with a bloody holding midfielder and it worked. Brilliant player for Manchester United. Goes under the radar. People think he was a bench player. He actually played a lot of games for us. Obviously, he was a midfielder in a midfield that had Scholes and Keane in it. And there was a lot of competition, but he played a lot of games. I think he was a fantastic midfielder and always had the best interests of the club at heart. He has had this to say about Manchester United's transfer business. And what are your thoughts? He says, I know Cunha has done really well over the last couple of seasons, but I really would have liked an experienced striker. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope they aren't making the same mistake with Sesko as they did with Rasmus. A young player coming in with no Premier League experience. It just feels like history repeating itself. Honestly, for what it would have cost, I would have gone and bought in someone like Ollie Watkins, someone to help and pull the young strikers out of a bad patch. When young players are just coming into the club, when the onus is on them to score, if they're having a few bad games, they have to have the safety net of being pulled out of the firing line. Watkins or someone like that would be who I would have been looking to bring in. What are your thoughts on that? Because twofold, I think it's quite interesting. We did look at Sesko and Watkins, and, you know, I actually think it's a really brilliant comment from Nicky Butt. I don't know that I agree with it, but I think it's a brilliant comment from somebody that was involved in the club. You know, Nicky Butt worked at that football club and left because he didn't like the way things were going. He was the guy who was the guy bringing the young players into the first team. So he's got a lot of experience. He's not just an ex-player earning a wage. He had a job at United that he really enjoyed and was very, very good at, and walked because he got fed up of certain people in the football club who aren't here anymore. I think it was Murta, if I remember correctly. So he speaks with a lot of knowledge on the bridge into the first team. He speaks with a lot of knowledge of what it's like to be a young player at Manchester United. I think it's a brilliant comment, and I think it's an opinion that is valid and should be respected, whether I agree with it or not. I like it. I think it's a brilliant topic. And he comes from a place of knowledge, not only as an ex-player, coming through as a young player, but very recently as that bridge between the first team and the youth team. What I found interesting, though, is that he said I'd have brought an Ollie Watkins in to protect younger strikers. So I think what he's actually saying is I'd have kept Rasmus and I'd have brought Ollie Watkins in. I think that's what he's talking about, because we never would have got Sesko and Watkins, because what he's saying is when you bring a young striker in and they have a bit of a bad patch, you need an experienced striker to help them out. Yabba dabba do, 100%. This is exactly what should have happened when we brought Rasmus. We should have brought an experienced striker and a younger striker instead of having a 20-year-old on his own for 2 years. And similarly with Sesko, I do feel like if things do go wrong, he probably could have done with an experienced striker to help him out a little bit. I agree with Nicky Butt. I think we are repeating history again because we've replaced Rasmus with an upgrade, because Sesko is a better player than Rasmus because he's played in the Champions League, he's played in the Bundesliga, he's scored a lot of goals. But still, it's a young striker with nobody there to support him. I agree with that. So I think he makes a good point. And look, would I have took Ollie Watkins and kept Rasmus? I'd have kept Rasmus anyway. I think we need two strikers. But I do agree with him that there is a risk with Sesko. It's a £70 million... No, I'm doing it now. It's a £68 million striker who has never played in the league before, who is young. So I've got no problem with what Nicky Butt said. And like, obviously we sometimes bring comments in here and you go, what a stupid opinion, this, that and the other. I think that is what, if football was political and you're in the House of Commons and Nicky Butt is the opposition and he said that, I'd say that's exactly what you should be doing as the opposition. You know, that's exactly what you should be doing as the alter opinion. Like, you've given a really good alternative opinion to what I believe. And I applaud it. I think this is what life's all about. You have an opinion that is absolutely valid. I just don't agree with it. But I think it's a great point. And ultimately, you've got the best interests of Manchester United at heart, and you are identifying a potential concern and how you would have avoided it. Effectively, you would have brought in an experienced striker, probably kept Rasmus, and done it that way, because you feel that an experienced striker, you know, shoulders the burden better. My personal feeling is that I really like Sesko. I think he's more experienced than people actually appreciate. I think that when we brought Rasmus into the club, we should have brought an Ollie Watkins in, or someone like that, because he was only 20. He was only 20 years old. I will not bury another Batman. He was only 20 years old, and there should have been an experienced striker with him. I agree. Is history repeating itself, like Nicky Butt says? It's repeating itself in the sense that I think we all agree that there is not enough depth in the striker situation if Sesko's not fit, and we've seen that in the first 3 weeks. If Sesko isn't fit, we use a false 9. I bloody hate it. I do not want to see Cunha, Mbeumo or Mount playing as our number 9. That's a bloody joke. If Sesko's not fit or injured, you need to play a number 9, and we don't really have one. So that's annoying. So I do agree that history is repeating itself in the sense that we're very thin up top. But I do not think, and I hope I'm going to be wrong about this, that Sesko is inexperienced like Rasmus. Rasmus came in at 20 with one breakout season at Atalanta. Sesko comes in at 22 with 4 or 5 seasons playing in the Champions League. Certainly played in the Champions League with Leipzig. I think he did with Salzburg. He is more experienced even though he's young. So I don't see Sesko as a learner driver, whereas 100% Rasmus at 20 in the Premier League was 100% a learner driver with no support, rabbit in the headlights, 100%. I think Sesko comes in with more authority and more experience. But I also think that, yeah, I would completely agree that we have got a little bit of a lack of depth up front. But I think it's a great point by Nicky Butt. I want to get some of your comments. Jared says if it was Gary Neville who said it, it would be a different conversation. No, it wouldn't, mate. You know, no, it wouldn't. I don't do that. I will jump on any opinion and give my piece 100%. I don't do agenda around anything. Like, I don't care whether I'm on with Terry at 11 o'clock. I'm sure there'll be some hot takes there that I haven't seen before, and I'll be even-handed with it and honest. Look, Gary Neville said 2 weeks ago we desperately need a goalkeeper and a midfielder. I thought, give him the job as CEO. You know, if somebody's talking my language, I'm not talking English, I mean like what I think, then I will back it 100%. And to be honest, that Nicky Butt conversation was one we had about 7 weeks ago. We were in talks with Watkins, then we were in talks with Sesko. Do we go for what? And some people wanted a more experienced striker that was Premier League proven, and some people wanted a younger striker that was more exciting. It was a very good point. And I do agree with Alex, who says, whatever the striker, it's a graveyard shift at the moment. I still think that's something analytically we will delve into maybe in a few weeks, but we still need to consider. The service isn't really there still. It's not massively better. When I think about Sesko, I think a couple of games I've seen a good cross into the box, but it's still a difficult header. I haven't seen massive sitters yet. I want to see more of that, definitely. Feels like Sesko isn't being backed. Needs our backing, says Simply Red. Look, taking it away from Nicky Butt, I heard what Carragher said about Gyökeres today. You know, something about he's not easy on the eye. A couple of weeks ago, Amorim's not been sacked because he's good looking. I mean, the level of punditry is shocking, really. A manager's not been sacked because of how he looks. Gyökeres isn't easy on the eye. I mean, what type of analysis is that? But, you know, Martinez is too small. De Ligt isn't quick enough and physical enough. I mean, there does seem to be a common theme. If you don't have a British passport, the criticism gets weaker and weaker. Sesko doesn't have a British passport. You and I are ridiculously naive if you don't think Sesko's got a target on him with the British media. Whatever you describe as the British media, like he has. And he will have, because he doesn't have a British passport. And maybe that's sad, but it's certainly not speculative. We've been doing this for a very long time, and I would sit there with any British journalist that has a problem with it, because I'm saying British media. You know, if you're feeling a little bit hurt about that, the British media is a very big thing. I would go through every single player from Martial through Pogba, Bruno, David De Gea, all of them, and I'd go, the treatment of that player compared to that player. You know, look at Luke Shaw. How has Luke Shaw been treated by the British media, considered he's always injured? He chose England over Man United. He played in he went to a tournament he wasn't even fit for. If that had been Paul Pogba or Bruno Fernandes, oh my God. Oh my God. So, 100%, if you've not got a British passport and you're coming into Manchester United, you might want to be wary, because you will get treated differently. But as a fan base, we're aware of that. And I think as long as we're aware of that, you know, that's all that matters. Jake says, would you rather get Baleba or Donnarumma and Gyökeres? Would you rather get Baleba or Don? Right here, right now, I'd rather have Baleba, because that's what we need. And we've got Le Mans and we've got Sesko. If you'd asked me that on June the 1st, I probably would have said Donnarumma and Gyökeres, because goalkeeper, striker and midfielder were all priorities. So I'd take the 2 over the 1. Dan says, 100% agree with Nicky Butt, and I think some of you will. I like good conversation. I respect good conversation. I don't have to agree with it, but I think he made a very valid and well-constructed argument, even though I don't agree with it. I think Sesko isn't a learner driver, but there's an impossibility. I would love to have Watkins and Sesko. I mean, that's just greed and it will never happen. But, you know, I think he makes a good point. Do you think Barcelona will send Rashford back early, says Evan? It's total and utter bollocks. So we'll leave it there. Greetings from Singapore, Mark, says Bedios. Yes, let us know where you're watching from. He says, I'm going to my first game at Old Trafford against Chelsea. Anything I should take note of? Great content as always. Don't buy a half and half scarf. Don't take photos constantly when the game's on. And what else? What else? I think those 2 things will help you out. I think United are going to win that game as well. Do you think United are transitioning? Okay, we've done that one from Shotgun Justice. Also, Seth says, Ben Jacobs was asked by the United stand about Sesko and Watkins on who Amorim wanted. Do you think Amorim is playing favourites because he didn't get what he wants? I don't know what Ben Jacobs said about that. I mean, look, honestly, let me be very clear here. I am very, very happy with the signing of Sesko. Very, very happy. But, Nicky Butt. When Nicky Butt says, I wish Man United had gone for a more experienced striker because history might be repeating itself with Sesko, let's not forget, there is a story behind our striker that hopefully will never get told again, because the only reason it would get told again would be because we got it wrong. But remember, we did not prioritise Benjamin Sesko as our number 1 striker. So what did we do? We went Liam Delap, who is the same as Sesko in relation to age and inexperience. We then went Gyökeres, who would have been a more experienced striker. We then went Ekitike, who would have been again another Sesko Delap, who's about 22, 23. We then went Watkins, that was experienced, and then we went back Sesko 23. So we went 23 experienced, 23 experienced, 23. You know, and when I say 23, I don't know whether Delap, Ekitike, and Sesko are all 23, but they're around that age. So remember, our recruitment of a striker this summer, I think we've landed on a really good player. But when you say, was it Amorim's priority? Did Amorim want Watkins or Sesko? We actually approached Watkins before Sesko twice. We went for Watkins at the start of July, and we went Watkins 4 days before we went in for Sesko. I don't know whether Amorim wanted Watkins over Sesko. I don't know. We will never know. Maybe we always wanted Sesko, but we didn't think we could get him because he was going to Arsenal. And it was only when Arsenal went for Gyökeres, we went for Sesko. I don't know the order of events. What I do know is we spoke to a lot of strikers before we got Sesko. So I don't think it matters where we end up. But we did go from quite different extremes. I mean, there's a big difference between Ekitike and Gyökeres. There's a big difference between Delap and Watkins. And there's a big difference between Sesko and Gyökeres. We just sort of went through 5. I mean, look, somebody just said, do you think we went for Osimhen? We might have gone for Osimhen. There might be... I don't think we did. I don't think we ever did anything with Osimhen, but he would have been another experienced striker. So if you add Osimhen into the list of summer signings, you've got Osimhen, Watkins, Gyökeres experienced, and you've got Ekitike, Delap, and Sesko inexperienced. We ended up with Sesko. The only one out of those 6 I wouldn't have really wanted was Delap. So I'm happy with what we got. John United 12 says, we needed Watkins with Sesko real competition up front. John, I think we might be a striker down. We will see, but we might be a striker down. But there is a flip side to that coin. There is a flip side to that coin. Dinero. There is a flip side to that coin, of course, in the sense that we're not in Europe. In the sense that we're only playing 1 game a week. I want another striker. I want another midfielder. But 4 midfielders for a pivot might be okay. Sesko and then people who can do a job there like Xerxes might be okay this season if we don't get unlucky. I agree with David Campbell. We are a striker light, but we also have to realise that, you know, United are making cuts all over the place, making more cuts than Freddy Krueger. So, you know, it's and as vicious and bloody, if we're being honest. They may have gone, look, you're going to have to go light up front because you're not in Europe. Carragher is just finding his other side, says Hitch. Do you think Le Mans could start and Amorim is hiding this to limit City's ability to prep? Maybe wishful thinking, says Tom. Yes, Le Mans could start on Sunday. Yes, he could. And I hope he does. Because I feel that... I call it the Casemiro effect. God, I've got more effects for players than anything. We've got the James Garner effect. We've got the Casemiro effect. There are other effects. The Bruno effect, which is putting somebody out of position. The Casemiro effect is basically, when we bought Casemiro, we bought him at the end of the window. And we had an international break. And we came back and we played, I believe it was Southampton away. And he had Casemiro on the bench. Even though Casemiro had played for Brazil on international duty, Ten Hag started McTominay. He had a bad game. We drew 1-1. And then Casemiro started to come into the first team. I call it the Casemiro effect because you make a signing and then you don't start them. And it's almost like you have to then wait for the player that's in position to make a mistake. So if we don't start Le Mans, we're basically waiting for the inevitable Binder mistake. And then Le Mans comes in and he will make a mistake because he's inexperienced. And as I said last night, I'd rather just put Le Mans in. Yes, he's going to make mistakes, but we stick with him. Putting Binder in goal, I think we're just waiting for the Arsenal mistake again. And look, Binder is really weak on corners. Like really, really weak. So that's a problem. Playing without wingers won't help Sesko, says David. Well, we do have wingers. We do have wingers. They're wide wingers, aren't they? Right, okay, I'm ready for this. I haven't looked at the poll. There was a comment with Carragher and his co on the overlap this morning about Manchester United's worst ever signing being Jadon Sancho. Admittedly, there was talk of lots of competition for it. We have a poll going on that who is Man United's worst signing? Anthony, Onana, Alexis Sanchez or Jadon Sancho? I will reveal the results of that poll in a moment because it's approaching 10,000 votes. But the justification for it being Jadon Sancho was that he came in with a big reputation from Dortmund and has been a nightmare and hasn't done that well. I do not believe that Jadon Sancho is Manchester United's worst signing. Because I think that there are components of a transfer that are more than the player. You've got to look at the price. You've got to look at what's gone on over the time they've been here. You've got to look at the backing of the fans behind the signing. And you've also got to look at the club and the manager that signed it off. We pursued Jadon Sancho across 2 summers. The entirety of a summer where we didn't get him, and then the following summer where we did. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was ringing him up saying we really, really want him. We scouted him for a ridiculously long time. So, yes, Sancho's not been great, and there are question marks over his personality. And yes, there were times in the season where he disappeared for 3 months, and we presume it was for mental health issues. We don't know. The club supported him. Then he's tweeting freedom. He's not been very respectful to this football club on the face of it. Apparently, he's been late for lots of training sessions, etc. But you've got to look at the fact that Manchester United played a massive part in that. Why did we not pick up on the signs? There were issues at Dortmund about turning up late, and United went full throttle in over 2 summers. So, yeah, I think he's a bad signing. I really, really do. But when I look at Jadon Sancho's impact at United, it's just been disappointing. It's been disappointing. He hasn't played particularly well. He hasn't treated us particularly well. We paid a lot of money. We pay big wages. I get it. He is one of the worst signings we've made. But when I look at, like, Andre Onana, I look at Onana and I go, this is worse. Because I think a lot of people think Sancho's the worst because they don't like Jadon Sancho. And I get that. But to be the worst transfer, there's more components than you don't like the player. Like there is the club's role in it, what they've done on the pitch, why we did it. We bought Jadon Sancho because we needed a right winger. We spent 2 summers trying to get him and we spent £75 million on him, but we needed a right winger. When I look at the Andre Onana signing, he hasn't treated the club anywhere near as bad as Jadon Sancho has. But Andre Onana, for me, is the worst transfer. I mean, this is prison time for who was involved in it, in my opinion. Jadon Sancho, I've seen that happen with loads of players. Loads of players have gone to clubs and flopped. Absolutely. But Onana, we had one of our greatest goalkeepers in our club's history. He'd just won the Golden Glove. He'd won multiple Player of the Year awards. He'd got us out of more shit than a farmer. He was absolutely at the top of his game as a shot stopper. Brilliant, brilliant goalkeeper. And we let him go for nothing to bring in Onana for 50 million quid, who instantly cost us Champions League football and continued to play volleyball instead of football every bloody week. I mean, yeah, you might go Sancho, but the damage on the pitch from Sancho, I can't really think of many. I think there was an away game to Fenerbahce or something where he didn't track back. But Onana, week in, week out, cost us games. I just think as a transfer, I don't let my, personal feelings get involved. I look at the pragmatism of it. We didn't need Onana. We did need Sancho. Sancho really didn't do that much damage on the pitch. Onana did. And we also got rid of De Gea to bring Onana in. That would be like getting rid of David Beckham. Not quite David Beckham, but that would be like getting rid of, I don't know, Bruno Fernandes to bring Jadon Sancho in. That's about fair, actually. In fact, I'd say De Gea might be a bigger legend than Bruno. But that's what it would be like. That would be getting rid of Bruno to bring Sancho in. And I think that element makes Onana the worst transfer for me, because the De Gea thing, removing De Gea to bring Onana in and the shit he's caused on the pitch, that makes it a worse signing for me, in my opinion. I understand why people might say Sancho, because Sancho obviously is not very popular and has been a complete and utter flop. But the Onana thing, because of the De Gea, because of the value of that deal, because of the damage he's done on the pitch, that is worse as a signing to me. There are 2 other candidates. Anthony obviously cost us £80 million for a fidget spin. And Alexis Sanchez was ridiculous. But for me, I think it has to be Onana. Because for me, as I said, the worst elements of a transfer are the components. It's not just, I don't like that player, he's behaved badly. It's what they did on the pitch. It's why we bought them. It's how much they cost. It's, the club's decision behind it as well. I mean, look, going back to Onana, we literally bought him. I mean, I hate to say it because a lot of fans did it, myself included, but we're fans. It feels like the club bought him on that 90 minutes in the Champions League final. Like, it feels like they were, conned, really. What about Donny van der Beek, says Lawrence? I think the problem with Donny van der Beek is that Ten Hag wanted Onana and wanted to remove De Gea. Ollie wanted Sancho. I don't think Ollie ever wanted Donny van der Beek. I think Donny van der Beek was the classic club signing. And I've always got sympathy with the player and the manager in that situation, because when the club makes a signing and the manager doesn't really want them and the player doesn't settle, that is more on the club than the player and the manager. Whereas I think with Onana and Sancho, that's on everybody. Everybody was involved in that. The manager in a very big way on both. Cameron says it's definitely Onana. Over the past 2.5 years, he's the reason we've exited any tournament, FA Cup, Carabao, Champions League, Europa League. Well, you know what? Definitely the Champions League in his first year. Definitely the Carabao Cup a couple of weeks ago. Definitely the Europa League final. I mean, people blame Luke Shaw, but that was shit goalkeeping in a 1-0 loss. So that's 3 straight away, plus a multitude of Premier League points. And FA Cup, did he cost us the FA Cup? Who knocked us out of the FA Cup last year? Who knocked us out of the FA Cup last year? I know we beat Arsenal. I can't remember that game. It must have been lost amongst loads and loads at Fulham. Fulham, yeah, it's Fulham. What happened in the Fulham game? Penalties. Was he in goal for the penalties? Yeah. Yeah, it cost us that as well, didn't he? He was in goal for penalties. Yeah, I mean, God, that guy. Honestly, Trabzonspor, if you ever have a penalty shootout, sub him off, and if you can't sub him off, basically ask him to walk off the pitch and just put a wheelie bin there. You've got more chance. You trust me, you've got more chance. Nick P says, for me, it's how much they cost us on the pitch, not the club finances. Onana cost us big time. Look, I completely get why people say Jadon Sancho is our worst ever signing, but I think most of that, in fact, 75% of that is just the complete and utter understandable frustration at the way he's behaved off the pitch. I look at a transfer and I go, what have they cost us on the pitch? And the De Gea thing just winds me up. I mean, I just cannot believe Man United had a brilliant goalkeeper who literally would save you points and removed him for a guy who will cost you points. I mean, get in the chat with things like that. I mean, it's like replacing your car that gets you to work for a bloody wheelbarrow that's got no wheels. It's just, in a footballing sense, it's like replacing Erling Haaland with Troy Deeney. Nothing against Troy Deeney, but he ain't Erling Haaland, is he? Nowhere near. And I mean Troy Deeney now, who's retired. That's what I mean. Replacing De Gea with Onana, it's just, it's like replacing Virgil van Dijk with Victor Lindelof. You know, it's just... And you notice how I'm not doing completely terrible. I'm like, you know, Victor Lindelof replacing Van Dijk is about right. But then letting Van Dijk go for free and spending £50 million on Lindelof, that makes it even worse. I will never move past that De Gea thing. I look at De Gea and I go, all right, he couldn't distribute from the back. But how many times over the years that De Gea was here did he save us games? And you look back at the last 2 years, I can pinpoint games. We'd have got 3 points there. We'd still be in that cup. We'd have won that final. Like, the horrible thing about the Onana deal is that it's not really his fault. It's the club, it's Ten Hag, it's Murta, whatever. But I can look at games and go, we would not have got... We'd have, in Ten Hag's first... Not his first season, but that season, in Onana's first season where we went out of Europe, we'd have still been in Europe. Like, we'd still be in Europe. In Ten Hag's season where we finished 8th, I think we'd have finished in the top 4. But Ten Hag could still be in a job if he kept De Gea, let's be honest. Like De Gea would have saved us so many points. The transfer window went up from a 4.5 to a 6 just because we got rid of Onana, so Stefano. I went from a 5 to a 5.5. Onana's got a longer highlights reel than Titus Bramble. That says everything. Bramble. Yeah, if you don't know who Titus Bramble is, look him up. You know, very, very, probably one of the most underrated Premier League centre-backs in Premier League history. Just check the highlights reel. You'll know what I mean. Thank you, Nick P. It's definitely Onana, says Cameron. Did that one. Onana has won man of the match. Sancho never won one, says Robert. I really don't think, Robert, that is a factor. Just because you've won a few man of the matches doesn't mean that you're not a shit signing. Like, you know, every summer has a sunny day. Doesn't make it a great summer. There'll be a reveal one day on Onana's time here, says Duma. Madrid want the midfielder Stiller from Stuttgart. These are the kind of deals we should be hijacking, or at least trying to be in the running for, says Class of 99. Apparently, Arsenal are interested in Stiller as well. Look, we'll see what happens with the midfield, won't we? I will add this as news. When it comes to the midfield, the window is closed. That's breaking news. But when it comes to the midfield, in 9 months' time, bigger clubs than us will want midfielders. Where will we be in the list? Look at the striker market. Where will we be? Osman was available. He's at Galatasaray. Gyökeres is available. He's at Arsenal. Ekitike is available. He's at Liverpool. So the problem with next summer is clubs will be looking for midfielders. Where will we factor into that? Wharton will probably be available. Belabra will be available. Stiller will be available. But they could all go to rivals. So I ain't going to worry about something we should have solved this summer. And I'm not going to start telling you who it's going to be next summer because there could be loads. Solomon says, what bigger clubs? I don't mean bigger clubs in the sense of Man United is one of the biggest clubs in the world, but what I mean is in pull. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City, PSG. There's 7 clubs that are a bigger pull than us at the moment because they have Champions League football every year and they're fighting for titles every year. We're not in that situation. So, you know, it doesn't mean we can't beat Real Madrid to a signing. We did it with Euro. But obviously, the market will be more competitive next year. Certainly. Okay. Can you do top 10 signings after Sir Alex Ferguson era, in your opinion, of course, says Nicholas? Not off the top of my head, but I think Bruno is the best signing we've had since Sir Alex. And then I do think you start to struggle a little bit then. I really do. I think our signings across the last 13 years, considering the spend, is shocking, really. James says that's a great comment. What bigger club? I think it's a terrible comment. James, where have you been for the summer? We're not a big club in relation to pull anymore. Cunha and Mbeumo, very good signings, but yeah, it's a tough one. If we get back into the Champions League, then we will have the pull. When I say bigger clubs, I think the Champions League is the big pull now. You need it for revenue, but also pull. Haaland might be out of the derby, says Maliki. I hope that's true. Haaland's always a big loss for Man City. Mark, Sancho for me, the toxicity was crazy, says Vinay. The transfer window, I've done that. Let me give you your reveals on this. Wow. So, wow, it was close. So, we've had 12,000 votes on this. Who is Man United's worst signing? The vote continues on the homepage, by the way, because we've got a poll going on. In last place, Anthony only got 9%. Sanchez in third place got 14%. Sancho was second with 38%. And Onana won out with 39%. So, very close between Onana and Sancho, which reflects a lot of the comments, to be fair. But Onana, worst signing. Hyen says, this is a minimum 6.5 out of 10 window. You're going extremely low. We just got rid of the crap and signed 4 exciting players. I don't know whether this is rage bait at the end of the show, Hyens, but I don't know how you can give it. Well, all right, you're saying it's a 6.5 out of 10, 6 being the average. One, I'm really bored of ranking the transfer window because we actually did a show on this a week ago and it's shut now. We've got to go with what we've got. And two, I'm not going extremely low. I'm giving my opinion and you're giving yours. If you think it's an above average transfer window, fair play. 6.5, I can live with it. It's not 8, is it? I gave it a low score of below average because we spent all summer negotiating an Mbeumo deal to pay what Brentford wanted. We spent all summer chasing a striker and he wasn't ready for the start of the season. We didn't bring a goalkeeper in until the window was virtually closed. We didn't bring a midfielder in at all. On the sales, we actually only sold Anthony and Garnacho and we did it right at the end of the window, giving us no time to buy a midfielder. And Rashford's gone out on loan with nothing coming in apart from wage coverage. Onana's going out with nothing coming in instead of wage coverage. And Sancho's gone out on loan. And we're talking about renewing his contract. So there are hidden reasons why I don't give this transfer window an average 6. I think it was slightly below average because whilst the headlines are good, the detail tells a different story. Mbermo wasn't fit for the start of the season. Sesko wasn't start of the season. We didn't have a goalkeeper or a midfielder for the start of the season. Positives, really like Sesko, really like Cunha, really like Mbermo, really hopeful for Le Mans, really like the fact that the bomb squad wasn't part of pre-season. So there's positives and negatives, but big job ahead for Amorim, definitely. Okay, hot take there from Hyans. I like it. Very good show. Don't normally get so much debate on a morning show. But really did enjoy it. I'm going over to Terry's channel now to do hot takes. I think he's got a couple of things for me to react to. I never know. I'll see you over there. I think it starts at 11. Thank you very much for watching this morning. We're back at 2, and I don't know whether it's an 8 o'clock show tonight or a 7 o'clock show. I'm in an R about whether to do an England watch-along. Personally, I think having England on while I'm doing an 8 o'clock show is better than doing an England watch-along, but I don't know what people's sort of thoughts are on that. I don't know whether... I don't really like watching England, but I feel I might do. I don't know. Anyway, Onana is officially our worst signing by you. Speak to you all in a bit. Take care.